Greetings family, welcome back to my channel.
In this particular video, I would like to discuss some comments that I just heard on I Never Knew TV, which is a YouTube channel that highlights issues in the Caribbean, issues in the Rastafari community, entertainment, etc. But on this particular episode, they interviewed a Rastafarian elder who I have a lot of respect for. He goes by the name Prof-I. Prof-I is a great drummer. He is a great thinker. He is one of the most disciplined members of the community that I can think of that is still around, sharing his information, sharing his history and experience. But in this particular video, he spoke about his entry into the Rastafari community, and he said that many persons shunned him and regarded him with suspicion. And he said they did this because he is a person who was of a mixed race heritage. Okay, our brother is a light-skinned individual, and this does not diminish him in any way. What I would like to say, some of the names that he said they call him were very disrespectful. He said that they call them white people children. He said that they call him half-breed, etc. Now, I believe that the persons he is referring to are persons who are not fully adjusted to the Rastafari way of life. Okay, there are many people today who have dreadlocks who are not necessarily the best proponents of the faith. Okay, in the Rastafari community, we do not preach or teach hatred or racial segregation. And the evidence is the fact that around the world, people have gravitated to the movement of all walks of life, all races and nationalities. Okay, I believe it was disingenuous to make a general statement and say that a few encounters that he had with individuals represented the movement itself or the movement as an entirety. Undoubtedly, there are persons who are not as well adjusted as others. And so I believe he had an encounter with an individual who wasn't necessarily very well versed in the movement. Okay, Prof-I, in my opinion, was making a hasty generalization that could potentially do harm to the reputation of these elders. It could do harm to the reputation of the formative members of the Rastafari faith. Okay, even today in the post-2000 era, there are individuals who are criticized for being of a mixed race heritage. Okay, some individuals are called the same names that he said he was called, like half caste, like white people pickney, etc. But in my opinion, I don't think he should muzzle himself and try to hide any aspect of his experience. But I do believe that as representatives of the faith, I think we should try our best to represent the faith in a fair and balanced way. Okay, so if you're going to mention something that is negative about your experience, you should also try to balance that with the positive. Okay, because he is still a member of the community, and Rastafari is now a global movement made up of all races and nationalities. Okay, if the movement itself was centered around racist ideology, I don't believe we would see it blossom and grow to what it is today. According to the Rastafari community, there is one God for us all. And so we don't practice segregating the people who are around us. We don't try to diminish anyone based on the color of their skin, based on their hair texture, or any other physical features. Okay, this would be contrary to the philosophy of Haile Selassie, whom the movement is named after. Okay, we see that all persons are a part of the human family. Okay, now this is not to discredit his experience, because colorism does exist in the black community and around the world. But I think we should try to communicate in such a way that we don't do harm to the movement that we say we represent. Okay, because this will give way to suspicion. Persons are going to wonder why you are labeling the early members of the movement as being insensitive. Okay, when I first heard it, my initial impression was that he was actually slandering them, because I have a great deal of respect for Prof-I and the elders who came before him. But why is it that people tend to focus on some of the more negative aspects of their experience? That's a question for a psychologist. But family, I would just like to say that the Rastafari community is not racist and is not colorist. Okay? I believe that it's possible to make the case that persons with a lighter hue or a lighter complexion have actually had greater successes than even many of the black members of the movement. Okay, if you look at multi-race individuals like Bob Marley went to the highest levels of success in the entertainment world, and he also did so by promoting the philosophy of Rastafari. Okay, Bob Marley identified with his African history, and this is widely known. So I don't believe that it's necessary to try and paint the movement with this broad brush and make it seem like it is based or the foundation of the movement is a racist ideology. In the early years of the movement, Garveyism was one of the principal philosophies that persons were living by. Okay, many of the proponents of Rastafari would have come from the Garveyite movement, which was also founded in Jamaica by Marcus Garvey. Okay, now many persons take a rather negative outlook of black supremacy. Black supremacy itself does not necessarily mean that black people are the greatest humans in history. What people were trying to do with the black supremacist ideology was inspire persons and to actually teach persons to look to their own race to solve their problems, just as other races around the world do. Okay, Marcus Garvey taught people to look to Africa for their redeemer and actually look at Africa as being the Holy Land. In the Rastafari community, we see Ethiopia as being a holy land, as the Jews consider Israel to be the Holy Land. Okay, but in our faith, we embrace our African origin and we promote our African origin. Okay, we also speak about the slavery that we experienced as a race, and despite this, we still embrace other races openly. Today, many of the elders in the Rastafari community are Spanish. Many of the elders are Caucasian. Many of the elders are Indians. And I believe this would not be the case if the movement itself was founded on a colorist philosophy or ideology. And so, in closing, I would like to say that I still have a great deal of respect for Prof-I. I don't think that he is an outrightly negative brother. I think he has a lot to offer to the younger generation in terms of his wealth of experience and knowledge. But as I said, when you represent an organization, I don't believe it is helpful for you to try and paint the organization as being insensitive in the early years, right? Even if he did say that later on, people relaxed their position and they treated him differently. The fact that you made reference to that seems like you're trying to diminish their legacy in some way, okay? Because even when he made these comments, there were several persons of Latino and Caucasian descent who were cheering him on and saying like, he's the real Rasta, he's real, wow, this is great. But I'm not surprised that they identify with this rhetoric. People seem to be always clamoring for someone to justify their philosophy, all right? And persons who are not of African descent, I can understand why black supremacist philosophy or any back to Africa philosophy would seem unsettling, okay? But the reality is the movement actually came from black people. The movement embraces all humans, but the movement was founded by persons of African descent. So when we speak against our oppression, many persons who may have descended from Caucasian people might feel like we are lumping them in. But the reality is, black people were put in slavery by persons of Caucasian descent. Okay, black people were enslaved by the Portuguese. Black people were enslaved and oppressed by persons of Spanish heritage. So, when we speak about the oppression of black people, one should always consider that we are not labeling all humans of a particular race as being colonizers or enslavers. But what we are doing is putting history in the proper context so that we don't forget our experience. Okay, but family, I would just like to say kudos to Prof-I for still maintaining his faith and staying steadfast in his philosophy. But I don't believe the comments were appropriate. I think he should have provided some context and help others to understand why this experience was taking place, why persons were distrustful of mixed race individuals in the 1930s. Okay, we're talking about the 1930s to maybe the 1970s. This is when the movement itself was becoming more and more popularized, okay? And during this period of time, many oppressive acts were taking place around the world, and black people were still victims of attacks and violent opposition, okay? But in terms of the movement itself, the fact that we consider Ethiopia to be the Holy Land, the fact that we are speaking against the colonizers who oppressed our people for many years, this should indicate to you that this is a social justice movement. And in a social justice movement, labeling your oppressors as oppressors is what you should do. But I believe context should be added so that people don't have this totally prejudiced outlook. Okay? But family, I just wanted to share my 2 cents on this issue, and I don't want anyone to look at Prof-I as being an insensitive person or somebody who has any axe to grind with the black community. But I think if he doesn't provide context, persons will interpret his statements as being this. Okay? I still have a great deal of respect for him, but I just wanted to share my opinion. Family, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all these dynamics. One love.